There's a strange kind of silence that comes after a heartbreak you didn't see coming, or worse, the kind you always saw coming but refused to name. And tonight, Scorpio, I think that's where you are. Not broken in the way people assume. Heartbreak looks like loud, messy, dramatic, but the quiet kind of broken, the kind where you still fold the blanket the way they liked, where you still check your phone out of habit, where you still flinch when you remember something sweet and immediately feel ashamed for missing someone who didn't treat you well. That is the kind of goodbye you're living now. Not one with tears and closure, but one where everything just slows down, fades out, and leaves a heaviness that you can't name. But I'll name it for you. This is the weight of loving someone who was never meant to stay. Because what if I told you you're not being abandoned? You're being rescued. You are not being punished. You are being preserved. I know that sounds strange, especially if your pillow has been soaked for more nights than you're willing to admit. Especially if you still wake up in the middle of the night hoping to hear a message that says, "I'm sorry," or "I was wrong," or just "I miss you." But none of those things will come, and maybe it's time to stop waiting for them. Because the truth is harder but cleaner. The person you love didn't deserve to stay, not because they were evil, but because they didn't water you, because they needed you to dim so they could shine. Because the only way they felt big was when you made yourself small. And Scorpio, you did make yourself small. You know you did. You remember the moments, don't you, when you didn't share your good news because you knew they'd roll their eyes or respond with silence? When you didn't wear that outfit because they once said it didn't suit you? When you didn't talk about that dream because they called it unrealistic? And over time, your shine became a threat. Your softness became ammunition. Your strength became a battleground. You weren't loved. You were managed. And you told yourself that was okay. You told yourself love takes compromise. You told yourself no one is perfect. You told yourself I'm intense. I'm hard to love. Maybe I should be more patient. But all of that was just armor to protect yourself from the truth they didn't show up for you. Not really. Not when it mattered. And God noticed what you refused to see. So he stepped in, not with thunder, not with lightning, but with distance. You noticed it, didn't you? First in the little things, less laughter, shorter replies, longer gaps between conversations. Then came the silence, the heavy kind, the kind that stretches for hours, then days. And even though it hurt, even though every part of you wanted to reach back out and fix it again, some part of you stayed still. And that part, that still, quiet, trembling part inside your soul, that was God holding your hand and saying, not this time, not again, not this cycle. You've bled enough. Because Scorpio, you weren't just losing sleep. You were losing yourself. You were pouring into a cup with holes at the bottom and calling it love. And your body knew it. You started getting headaches. You felt tension in your shoulders. You felt tired no matter how much you slept. That wasn't random. That was your soul screaming. Your nervous system cracking under the pressure of being in survival mode with someone who was supposed to feel like home. I know what it's like. I've lived it too. The begging, even in silence. The bartering with the universe, I'll be better. I'll change. I'll be quieter. Just let them stay. And yet the more you begged, the more they pulled away. The more you gave, the less they respected. The more you tried, the more you broke, until one day, the silence between you wasn't an accident, it was a message. The removal had already begun. What people don't understand about Scorpio is that you don't let go easily. You bond through soul and marrow. When you love, it's a contract with your entire being. So when that love ends, it feels like betrayal. It feels like death. But here's what no one told you. Sometimes the death of a relationship is the beginning of your resurrection. Sometimes the person who walks away is just making space for the version of yourself you couldn't meet while they were still standing in the way. Because Scorpio, your healing begins the moment you stop chasing explanations, the moment you stop blaming yourself, the moment you say, I don't need to know why they didn't choose me, I choose me. That is your turning point. That is the exact second the story begins to change. And it will change. Slowly, at first, like breathing through fog, like walking through thick water. But one day, you'll laugh, and it won't be forced. One day, you'll wake up and you won't check your phone. One day, you'll hear their name and you won't feel that knife in your chest. And one day, maybe not soon, but eventually, you'll look in the mirror and see yourself again. The version of you that existed before you started editing yourself for someone who didn't deserve the final draft. Let them go. Let them walk away. Not because it doesn't hurt, but because the pain is proof that it mattered and that it's now over. The cord is cut. The soul lesson is complete. And Scorpio, what's waiting for you on the other side of this grief is not just peace, it's power. It's love that doesn't confuse you. It's connection that doesn't contradict your worth. It's silence that feels sacred, not scary. It's being able to breathe fully again, for the first time in years. So tonight, if you can't sleep, if the memories are louder than your heartbeat, if you still want to reach out one more time, don't. Breathe instead. Cry if you need to, but don't bargain with God. He's not taking something away. He's giving something back you. And that is the beginning of everything. Let's stop pretending. Let's stop pretending that this was just a rough patch, that they didn't mean to ignore you, that you were just too emotional, too intense, or too dramatic. You weren't. You were shrinking. Silently, repeatedly, and worst of all, voluntarily. It didn't happen overnight. It was slow, strategic, invisible to the outside world. But you felt it. You felt it every time you hesitated before speaking. Every time you edited your opinion in real time. Every time you swallowed a truth just to avoid an argument. And Scorpio, let's be honest, you have fire in your blood. When a Scorpio starts silencing themselves, something has already gone terribly wrong. They made you doubt the very parts of you that used to make you feel powerful. Your voice, too much. Your ambition, intimidating. Your truth, overthinking. And just like that, they trained you to apologize for being who you've always been. You, who used to walk into rooms like a storm. You, who used to make decisions with sharp instinct, you became a whisper. Not because you were weak, but because you were trying to survive. And the worst part, you started calling it love. You thought, maybe if I'm softer, they'll stay. Maybe if I stop outshining them, they'll love me more. Maybe if I keep the peace, they'll finally stop treating me like I'm the problem. So you shrank, you minimized, you folded yourself into something digestible, you dimmed your light, not realizing it was the only thing keeping the relationship warm. Let's call it what it was, emotional starvation. They never outright told you to shut up. They didn't have to. Their silence was loud enough. Their eyes scanned you like a threat, not a partner. Their compliments came with strings. Their support was selective. And slowly, you learned to perform a version of yourself that wouldn't upset the balance. But you were never meant to balance. You were meant to burn. The person you loved didn't just fail to protect your fire. They smothered it because they couldn't handle your truth, your energy, your desire for depth. And here's the brutal truth. When someone only loves the smallest version of you, that's not love. That's control. They say love is patient and kind. But what about love that's manipulative and quiet? What about the kind of love that watches you erase your own reflection and claps for you when you do it well? No one talks about this. No one prepares you for the kind of relationship that doesn't hurt with fists but with silence, with lack, with indifference. The kind that turns your pride into guilt, your clarity into confusion, the kind that feels like walking on eggshells while holding your breath. But Scorpio, let's be clear, this is not who you are. You were not born to apologize for your power. You were not designed to water yourself down. You were not built for begging, tiptoeing, performing, or earning the bare minimum in return for your everything. You were built for intensity, for full presence, for raft truth, for love that sees every inch of you and doesn't flinch, for partnerships where your shadow is embraced, not feared, for rooms where your silence is respected but your voice is still heard. So here's the ugly, the beautiful truth you've been avoiding. You shrank to survive, but now you must expand to heal. The version of you they wanted to keep is not the version of you that's meant to thrive. And you know it. You feel it in your chest, in your bones, in your memory. You feel it every time you recall a conversation where you said it's fine but knew it wasn't. Every time you deleted the text you wanted to send. Every time you caught yourself nodding when you wanted to scream. Every time your gut told you to leave and you didn't. But now, you're remembering. You're remembering what it felt like to take up space. You're remembering how to speak without shrinking. You're remembering what your voice sounds like when it isn't filtered through fear. And you're remembering that love is not supposed to feel like losing a war with yourself. Scorpio, this isn't just about one person. This is about every time you thought loving someone meant betraying yourself. Every time you confused emotional starvation for sacrifice. Every time you measured your worth through someone else's reaction. Every time you believed that intensity made you unlovable. That's the lie they fed you. And you almost believed it. But not anymore. This is the part where the old version of you dies. The version who accepted silence as safety. The version who tiptoed around red flags. The version who chose shrinking over walking away. That version ends here. And the version who rises, she doesn't ask for permission. He doesn't need to be understood. They don't wait to be chosen. Because the next time someone asks you to shrink to stay, you'll remember what it cost you the first time. And you'll choose freedom. Every time. It starts quietly. You tell yourself you're just tired. You tell yourself you just need a few nights of good sleep. You tell yourself it's the weather, the stress, the caffeine, anything but what it really is. You don't want to admit that your body is carrying a grief your mind refuses to process. But Scorpio, your body is smarter than your denial. It remembers every tension you dismissed, every argument you pretended didn't matter, every moment you forced yourself to stay calm while dying inside. At first, it was small. Your shoulders tightened during their silence. Your stomach knotted before you saw their name appear on the screen. Your heart raced at the sound of their tone. Those were signals, warnings, internal alarms screaming, "This is not safe." But you ignored them. Didn't you? You told yourself it was love. You told yourself that intensity was passion. You told yourself you were overreacting. That's how it always begins with self-gaslighting, so subtle you start believing your pain is imaginary. Then one morning, you wake up already exhausted. You haven't done anything. Yet you feel as though you've been running from something for hours. Your back aches. Your head pulses. Your throat feels tight. You stare at the mirror and don't recognize the person looking back. Your eyes look dull. Your skin feels heavier. Even your breath feels foreign. It's not just fatigue. It's emotional corrosion, wearing your body down cell by cell. And the worst part, you keep performing normalcy while falling apart from the inside out. Scorpio, what you've been feeling isn't weakness, it's data. Your nervous system has been in survival mode for so long, it forgot what safety feels like. The constant walking on eggshells, the endless cycle of pleasing, explaining, apologizing, those were battles your body fought every single day. You thought you were managing emotions, but your heart was fighting wars. That constant pit in your stomach, it's what happens when your intuition is forced to stay silent too long. Those migraines that come out of nowhere, they're the buildup of everything you never said. That exhaustion, you can't sleep away. That's what it feels like to live in a state of permanent alert, even in your own home. Doctors can't scan this kind of sickness. They can't find betrayal on an MRI. They can't measure emotional malnutrition through blood tests. This is a soul injury that medicine can't touch. Because what's happening isn't just chemical, it's spiritual. You've been living in a place where your energy was constantly stolen, where your body became a battlefield between what you knew and what you pretended not to know. And that kind of tension doesn't disappear when the relationship ends. The body keeps the score. The body remembers. It remembers how you clenched your jaw instead of screaming, how you smiled through humiliation, how you forced yourself to stay in conversations that drained the life out of you. Every time you said, "I'm fine," when you weren't, your cells took notes. Every time you forgave what broke you, your heartbeat changed rhythm. And one day, your body started begging you to leave through pain, through anxiety, through illness. That's the part people misunderstand about heartbreak. It doesn't just live in your chest. It lives in your gut, your spine, your skin. It changes how you digest food, how you breathe, how you stand. It hides in muscle memory. It sits behind your eyes when you're too tired to cry. You can tell yourself, "I'm over it." But your body knows better. Because it never had the chance to release the weight of what it carried. You might think healing means moving on, finding closure, forgiving them. But healing, for you, Scorpio, and begins when you start listening to the body you've been betraying. When you stop ignoring the tension in your shoulders, when you admit that you are not okay, and that being not okay is an act of truth, not weakness. When you start honoring what your body has been trying to tell you all along, you are not safe here. It's hard to accept that love can make you sick, that affection can come wrapped in poison, that someone's presence could destabilize your health. But deep down, you already know it's true. You felt it. You've watched yourself fade. You've wondered how a relationship that once made you feel alive turned into something that drained the color out of your face. You've looked at old photos and thought, "I used to look happier." That's because you were. Before you started living in emotional emergency mode, before your nervous system became a hostage to someone else's unpredictability, and now you're here, at the point where you can't pretend anymore. The adrenaline is wearing off. The fog is lifting. The truth stands naked in front of you. Your body has been trying to save you. Every panic attack was a message. Every sleepless night was a warning. Every ache was your spirit's attempt to communicate. This is what divine intervention feels like. It's not always a gentle whisper. Sometimes it's a breakdown. Sometimes it's a diagnosis that forces you to slow down. Sometimes it's your body refusing to carry the emotional weight one more day. You call it burnout. The universe calls it protection. You are not fragile. You are recovering from overexposure to someone who drained you. You are learning what balance feels like after years of chaos. You are learning that rest is not laziness. That distance is not coldness. That silence is not failure. You are detoxing from an energy that made your soul sick. And you will recover. Slowly. Imperfectly. You will sleep better. You will breathe easier. Your body will start trusting you again. And one day, you'll wake up and realize your shoulders aren't tense. Your heart isn't racing. Your stomach feels calm. That is what healing looks like, not grand, not cinematic. But qui. The illness that didn't show up in scans was never invisible. It was simply unacknowledged. It was there, written in your fatigue, in your sadness, in the way you flinched at softness because you'd learned to expect pain. But now you see it. Now you name it. And what is named can finally begin to leave. There is a strange cruelty in the way life keeps offering you miracles while you're too busy holding on to poison. You didn't see it that way at the time. Scorpio, you called it loyalty. You called it faith. You called it love that refuses to give up. But what it really was interference. You were blocking your own blessings. You were standing in front of doors that were meant to open, arguing with a wall that was never going to move. Every moment you spent trying to fix someone who didn't want to be fixed, you were saying no to something that was already waiting for you. Every time you chose to stay silent instead of walking away, you were postponing your peace. Every time you begged for clarity from someone who thrived on confusion, you were delaying your own destiny. And that's the brutal truth. No one likes to face sometimes the very person you're fighting to keep is the reason your life keeps standing still. You see, energy doesn't lie. While you were giving everything you had to that relationship, your spirit was running on fumes. You were trying to plant gardens in toxic soil. You were trying to manifest abundance in a space that only knew lack. It's no wonder nothing grew. You were exhausted, drained, disconnected from your intuition, too tired to dream, too consumed by drama to notice the quiet knock of opportunity. Blessings don't fight for attention. They wait at the door until you're ready to open it. But you weren't. You were too busy chasing a ghost. Think back. Scorpio, how many times did you almost step into something good but turned away because that person didn't approve? How many friendships did you neglect because they made your partner jealous? How many projects did you abandon because they said you were being unrealistic? How many times did you stop yourself from shining because it made them insecure? Count them. Those are the blessings that tried to reach you and couldn't, not because they weren't meant for you, but because you weren't available to receive them. You were too focused on surviving someone's inconsistency. You were too busy explaining, defending, fixing, proving. And while you were trapped in that endless loop of emotional labor, the universe stood still and waited for you to remember who you are. Because blessings can't coexist with self-betrayal, you can't manifest abundance while tolerating disrespect. You can't receive love while settling for confusion. The vibration doesn't match. The frequency is off. And the universe, no matter how generous, can't send gifts into chaos. Here's the hardest part to accept: you weren't being punished. You were being protected. Every time something you wanted didn't work out, it wasn't rejection, it was redirection. Every time a plan fell apart, it was God pulling you out of places that couldn't handle your magnitude. But you took it personally. You cried. You blamed yourself. You thought you weren't enough, when really, the universe was whispering, I can't give you what you ask for while you're still attached to what's killing you. Scorpio, this is the paradox. You asked for transformation, but you wanted to stay comfortable. You prayed for better, but refused to release worse. You begged for peace, but kept walking into storms. You wanted the miracle without the loss. But it doesn't work that way. Something always has to die before something new can live. And in your case, it wasn't love that needed to die, it was the illusion of it. The version of love that looked like sacrifice, felt like anxiety, and sounded like silence. That version couldn't coexist with your destiny. The universe doesn't withhold blessings. It waits for alignment, and alignment requires honesty, the kind that burns. The kind that forces you to admit you were addicted to potential, not reality. You were worshiping what could be, while ignoring what was. You thought endurance was proof of love. But sometimes, endurance is proof of fear. Fear of starting over. Fear of loneliness. Fear of facing yourself. But here's the turning point. You're not afraid anymore. The heartbreak cracked you open. The silence forced you inward, and somewhere between anger and exhaustion, you realized that all the things you wanted, stability, respect, inspiration, peace, were never missing. They were waiting. You were just too distracted to notice. The moment you stop chasing what drains you, the current reverses. The air shifts. The same universe that once felt cold starts moving things into place again. You start receiving calls you never expected. People show up who speak to your soul, not your wounds. Opportunities find you when you least expect it. Not because you've suddenly become lucky, but because you finally became reachable. That's what blessings are. Scorpio, they're not random miracles. They're coordinates. And when you're lost in the orbit of someone who doesn't value you, you're simply off course. The blessings don't disappear. They just circle around, waiting for you to realign with yourself. So maybe now you understand why everything fell apart. Maybe now you see why the relationship had to end, why the silence had to grow, why the pain had to deepen before it could release you. Because while you were busy holding on to someone who refused to meet you halfway, life was trying to hand you everything you've ever asked for. And now, finally, your hands are free. This is where the shift happens. This is where you stop saying why me and start saying thank you. This is where you realize that losing them was never the loss. The real loss would have been never knowing what else was meant for you. What's next won't look like what you've lost. It will feel lighter, cleaner, quieter. There will be people who meet your energy instead of competing with it. There will be paths that unfold effortlessly instead of demanding your blood. And for the first time in a long time, you won't have to fight for the bare minimum. You'll simply receive, because the blessings were never gone. Scorpio, they were just waiting for you to stop standing in your own way.